Good morning. I'm Chris Jones with the University of Arizona, Gila County Cooperative Extension. Welcome to our weekly edition of the Garden and Country Extension webinar series. Today, we are talking about tree planting and arborist best management practices. We have Rebecca Senior with us today. A little bit about these webinars. They are a weekly Zoom webinar, 60 minutes or less, Thursdays at 11 in Arizona. If you've got questions and we go over the hour, I'll just stop the program and we'll finish those questions out as long as Rebecca's willing to stay with us. These webinars feature a variety of horticultural natural resource topics relevant to the environmental conditions and residential concerns of Gila County, Arizona, and anywhere else in the world. And we're talking about planting trees, that is everywhere in the world. A recording will be posted at extension.arizona.edu/Gila, or you can email me at ckjones@arizona.edu. We have a YouTube playlist, so I'll hook you into that. You can see all these webinars and just get great information from all the speakers we've had. And the University of Arizona is an equal opportunity affirmative action institution. So with that, I'm going to bring up our affirmative action poll, launch that. And if you take just a moment to answer those 3 questions, I would be very grateful. We report this back to our, we report this every year. And let me get back to the slides here to introduce Rebecca.
Donna, would you get my phone out of the bathroom? Please.
And here's our agenda for today. We've got, thank you for everybody who joined us a little early for our login and lag time. This is Chris Jones. I'm your moderator doing your welcome here right on the hour at 11. Our topic today is tree planting, arborists best management practices with Rebecca Senior. She has about a half-hour presentation for us with and slides. When she finishes up, we'll go to our question and answer discussion with Rebecca. You can put in your questions to the chat or Q&A, and I'll feed those to her and get our answers. And we will wrap up this discussion by noon. Here is our speaker. Rebecca is a International Society of Arboriculture certified arborist, and that's no simple thing. She's an assistant in extension of ornamental horticulture at the Maricopa County Cooperative Extension Office with the University of Arizona. And with that, welcome, Rebecca. How are you today?
Hi there. I'm wonderful. I'm so happy to be here. I love talking about trees. I love planting them in the fall. It's nice and cool. So I am thrilled to talk about trees with everyone, planting them.
Nice. Okay, well, go ahead, use that share screen, pull up your slides. You've got it. And thank you so much for being with us today, Rebecca.
Okay. So an arborist best management practices. That's what we're going to talk about. We have 30 minutes, so we're not going to go into, lots of details, but we are going to go into details of what the International Society of Arboriculture suggests. So some of our topics are, briefly, we're going to talk about selecting that right plant and the best planting site, because I want to help you find those resources. And so we have some great resources, publications that the scientists at the University of Arizona put together. As I said, the best management practices of planting, the techniques, and just where is the top of the root ball. So forever, people would say, just, don't plant the root ball below the grade, plant the root ball at grade or above. But then nobody ever said, just where is the root ball? So we are going to find out just where is the root ball. So in this introduction part, this is, I know, review for a lot of us, because people attracted to plant webinars are really plant people. So I know I'm talking to my fellow brethren here. So, well, the best time being fall, because there are at least 4 months before we start to get hot in end of March, April. So that gives plenty of time for that root system, the initial root system, to grow before the summer heat and stress comes. And why is that so important? Because we need those absorbing root hairs to be able to multiply over those 4 months, so that they can bring in the water and other nutrients needed when it is so hot here. The soil is still warm, so for y'all a little bit farther north, this matters, but we'll see, maybe not as much as you think. You'll see something surprising in a few slides. So when that soil is warm above 50 degrees, it supports more active root growth. Now, we don't have the Minnesota winter where the roots really go to sleep. They probably in the valley don't go to sleep at all. But don't you think maybe the payson tree roots go to sleep? Let's see. So of course, air temperatures having dropped reduces all those stressors of excess transpiration and other heat related stressors. And then people enjoy getting back out into the landscape. I do, it's really fun. So have you ever heard of the Arizona Meteorological Site? It's a weather data collection, collects them around the state. So all the green dots on this map are active stations. The red ones, I'm sorry, are deactivated. And this is a University of Arizona site. It's called ASMET. You could just Google ASMET, University of Arizona ASMET, and you would find it, or there is the full URL down there on the bottom. So you would click on any one of the active stations and it brings you to the data. Here's the downtown Phoenix Encanto station. So it's pretty much central Phoenix. This is October 2020, because I can't show you October 2021, right? And this golden circled column, that's the soil temperatures at 4 inches below the soil level and 20 inches. So when you just run down this row, in October of last year, 4 inches below the soil, it was well above 60, just a couple in the 50s. So we're not probably too worried about our soil being too cold for active root growth. And when you get to 20 inches, it didn't drop a whole lot, did it? So that's interesting. Now, what about in payson? So I also pulled the payson data from October 2020. And well, golly, it's still mostly over 60. So that soil has not cooled down, although our air temperatures probably cool down a lot more than in Phoenix, but the soil is still holding the warmth. So yes, planting in the fall is good because soil is still warm. A little quick communication is shared definition, a few concepts and terms that I'll be using, a little bit of biology refresher for everybody. Let's always remember that plants make their own food through photosynthesis, primarily their leaves, but also, sometimes in stems and trunks. And they store food primarily as starches in their branches and roots. So we always have to be mindful that we don't want to get in the way of plants making their own food. And that means don't prune them up and cut their leaves and stems off. All right, so plants make their own food. They are awesome. Pruning reduces that food production and food storage. Another couple terms that we'll be using is the establishment period, which you probably know about it. So the establishment period is the time needed to grow a landscape root system from a nursery root system. And primarily we have container grown plants here. And so our little bit of container, the root system in there, it's very tough for the nursery people to get a good root system in a container. So just to be mindful of that too. Trees can take up to 3 years to become established. Where is the trunk or root flare? So it's a synonym. You can call it a trunk flare or a root flare, but it is both. It is the area of transition between the root system and the trunk. And we want to see beautiful root flares. So got energy reserves. Well, back to me harping that plants store energy as starch or sugar, and plant stress, or if there's multiple, if it's plural, I'll call them stressors, which is kind of a funny word, but sometimes that will negatively affect, it's something, not sometimes, it always does, plant stress. It negatively affects the tree health. It stimulates a response, which is going to use energy reserve, and stress accumulates, then it becomes strain, and strain is irreversible in a tree. So our planting goal is to avoid tree stress and people stress too. So I wanted to talk about the Arborist best management practices, the BMPs. And there are these booklets that you can see. There's one on tree planting. There's many more than this. This is just 3 of them. So these are the standards for the arboriculture industry to follow. And ISA is the International Society of Arboriculture. So these are going to be the guidelines that are generally going to fit here and in Italy and in New Zealand, because we have members in all of those countries. It is available for anyone to purchase from the ISA website. And these are great books for, I don't really know how much they are, $16. Yeah, if you want to really understand how to prune a tree, you know, get the best practices of tree pruning. But there is more. The University of Arizona scientists create publications that promote best management practices, and they can be accessed at this link. So I don't know if you've ever gone or if you realize that we had a search box for all of our publications. But if you just put University of Arizona publications, you'll get there in your search engine, or you can use this link and you can search for, there's like search categories that you can click down here. So if you want to see all of the, you know, marketing and retailing, I don't know why any of us would like that, but maybe we might like microbiology beyond, you know, the landscape plants. And you can search for an author's name or date. If you want to know, hey, what's the new publications that the university has just put out, just put the date of the last 3 months in here, the date range. And here is one by Ursula Shook, who is a scientist down at the University of Arizona in the plant sciences, and she puts a lot of great publications for us to use. So this is the planting guidelines, containers, trees, and shrubs. It has some graphics that help you see how to plant, and something that you could hand out. Let's now move from the introduction to the right plant, right place. This is another publication. I just want to, you know, get on my soapbox and say, hey, go to that site, check out some of these publications. This is on plant selection and selecting your plants, which I did say in our big topics. I want to touch on it. Can't really spend a lot of time on it, but I want you to know where to find the information. So where to find information in this publication, they talk quite a bit about microclimates, and everybody knows where the dog lays in your flower bed on the north side in the summer, right? Dig a little, lay there, nice and cool. So that's our coolest spot. Certainly, if I wanted to plant something that was very frost sensitive, I'd be down here on the south side of my house. Microclimates, we can look for them. We can also make them. So something to keep in mind. And here's something else, an excerpt from that publication talking about the different ways that we get plants. Primarily here in Arizona, we get container grown plants. They're in the black containers. A containerized plant would be maybe field grown. That's very different in that it is in the mineral soil, not in the organic soil. We might get some of those. We get citrus down here that way, field grown and dug. Bare root, maybe up north, a lot of the fruit trees. It's hard to hold bare root here. We're just not cool enough down in the Phoenix Valley. And also ball and burlap is not common here. There's also a publication on the climate zones that can help you learn more about wherever you are throughout the state. So if you're watching today from, you know, Kingman, Arizona, there's information in this publication for you. In selecting that right plant to put in the right place, Another resource just wanted you to know about was that the Arizona Nursery Association has a container grown tree guide. And there's the link. So how big should a 24-inch box Texas ebony be? How tall should it be? How wide? How many inches should the caliper of that tree be? Because you want the right size. You don't want one that's undersized that just got planted up with a little wimpy root system. And you also want one that hasn't been held in the box a long time. Yeah, if the boards on your 24-inch box are falling apart, that's a clue. If the termites have gotten to it, yeah, that's a clue. So here's the Ebenopsis ebano, that's the Texas ebony. The size is 24-inch. And it gives you the height, width, and the caliper. So that 24-inch, it should have a 1 to a 1.5-inch caliper trunk. These are not really big trees, even, at the 24-inch. So if you find one with a big 3-inch caliper and you're so happy and excited, you might end up being like me, who as a very young person loved that twisted pine tree. I thought it was like, a bonsai, and I made a little corner planting and it died. So how to select that best one after you have chosen, the type of plant you want. You want the ebano, Texas ebony. Here's some things to think about. And I do think we should spend some time paying attention to that plant when we're selecting from many of the species. So consider the benefits of selecting a locally grown plant adapted to our waters and our soils. I mean, we know this, right? Spend time examining the plant and, spend time examining the root system, which I call it the wiggle test. You just gently rock the trunk near the soil line, a couple inches up. And if it moves anything other than a firm response, then there's probably a root defect, or it may have just been potted up and it has a little wimpy root system. So just for our nursery friends, it's all about roots and respect. So ask the nursery workers for help if you want to explore those roots hands-on, and I'm sure they'll be glad to help you. Another site where you can find a lot of information that is, it is mostly put together by some extension people in Florida and California. So really great information. And what's really nice is it has these planting details and specifications that are open source. So you can take these, put your name on them for your group that's doing a planting, a volunteer planting. You can alter them, and they were made as a gift from a couple of the extension people in other states. So this is a great site. And that's where this specification, this PDF that I could take Urban Tree Foundation Planning Guide and I could change it to say, whatever I wanted, my Arbor Day planting. I could change some of this. It is down here, open source, free to use. So that's a really nice gift and a resource that you should know about. All right, so now it's time to dig the hole. So we've selected our tree. We know we've got a great tree. We know we're confident in that root system. So now dial 811 and they will do a marking of the utility, only the pipes they own. So if it's the electrical company and you have that electrical meter on the side of your house, you're going to get it marked all the way to the side of the house. If your water meter is at the front of your property, you're going to mark it for like 5 inches, maybe, right? Because after that, that's your pipe. So just know that it doesn't mean once it's marked that you know where everything is. You might need a private locator. All right, now we're going to dig the hole. And the depth and the width of the hole are so important. And we say no deeper than the root ball. We're going to explore, we're going to define, we're going to learn the secret of where the root ball is. Planting too deep is a common and hard to correct mistake. We notice it when sometimes the tree is a couple years old, so hard. On the width, 3 to 4 times the width of the root ball. So, okay, take a look down here. Reality check. That means a maximum 8-foot diameter hole would be needed for that 24-inch box that we just bought. I don't know if that's going to happen. So this 15-gallon, it probably should have a 5-foot diameter hole if we did the maximum expansion. So we've dug a hole that is, you know, maybe 3.5 foot. And we just laid a straight pipe on there so we could see where our depth was. This particular tree, really well grown. It did not need any root pruning. Little nod to the root system. No trees have handles on them. Plants don't have handles. Yes, we have to lift them from the bottom. So once you've got this hole dug, here's an easy way to increase the diameter. And when I say the diameter, you don't have to go all the way down, but you do need to just take your shovel and chip in. And that way you are loosening, you're expanding that soil that is loosened and has more air in it for the roots to move out into this landscape soil. That's what we want for establishment. Watering in between the backfill layers to settle the soil or gently tamp with the shovel handle needs to be done. Do we amend the backfill? No, we don't. You probably all know this. We use the native soil for backfill. But an inch of live compost or a nutrient-rich top dressing that has mycorrhizae and chicken feathers and so on can really feed the soil. So an inch or so on there, and you just work it in 2 inches. This weed weasel is a nice friend of mine for cultivating things like this. You can do it standing up. So, you know, remember this little saying, feed the soil and the soil feeds the plants. Especially if that soil is kind of barren. This planting site had been just stomped on and no plants had been grown in it, no water applied to it for a long time. So we did need to give it a little boost. And then mulch, yes, mulch. Mulch is the magic. Inorganic, like decomposed granite, okay, but the organic is really the magical part because it retains moisture that helps the root growth. It feeds the microorganisms and keeps the soil cooler. It is the magic for establishing plants and for established plants. So, but we put about 2 inches on. If it decomposes and evaporates, right? Add 2 more inches, but keep it around 2 inches and keep it away from that trunk. Fill the water basin before mulching so you can see where the soil has settled. Here is a trunk or root flare. So here's the question, where is the top of the root ball? Or where's the place where the root tissue transitions to trunk tissue? And I say transition because it's probably some 50-50 somewhere. I don't think there's a white bright line like a grafted tree. So you can see this tissue is a little different. There was about 4 inches of excess media that we removed on this. And so you want to kind of pull that organic back from the top a little bit and see what your plant looks like in the nursery if you can. And root prune if needed. We decided that this needed to be root pruned. This is the place where it was attached. It's above the main roots. Can you see a root flare on a little tiny tree? No, really you can't. And when they have the excess mulch in the containers, which is common, those adventitious roots, because they're taking advantage of the mulch and the moisture and the nice dark place, and they grow up into that mulch. Now, this one is not circled around, but when they grow up into the mulch and they start to circle, those are your future girdling roots that really are a sad thing when your 10-year-old tree now has a big problem. In the ISA Best Management Practice booklet, it says remove all roots growing against the sides of the container wall, and that shaving the root ball is an effective method for reducing future root defects. And this is done by removing a thin layer from the side, supposed to be from the sides and bottom of the root ball with like a saw. Works pretty well on these small containers. And you're trying to cut those roots that have hit the side of the container and then started to circle. You can also explore for them a little bit. I state be gentle with the root ball when doing root pruning. This tree that we were just looking at the root system, it got a long trench to increase the loosened and aerated soil. And then when we planted it, it did have a round watering basin. So the goal for establishing a tree is to avoid drought stress. Oh, what does that mean? It means the plant, if it was dug from the field, had most of its absorbing roots cut off, right? If it is in a container, it had that limited area to have their absorbing roots. And sometimes without like a root pruning or another technique to burn the tips of the roots when they hit the side of the container, they circle into long snakes. And you may have seen a plant that looks like it had snakes down there in the container. And some species are much more susceptible to this. And it can take up to 3 years for a tree to really grow that landscape root system, to get out into the adjoining soil. But that's what it means to be established. You want to keep the soil moist, but not waterlogged, especially for those first 2 critical months. So I know this is a little blurry, which is just going to compel you to go to the watering guide site and take a look at this landscape watering by the numbers. This is a plant establishment guideline, and you can see it's running through 8 weeks. So the first week you want to water every 1 to 2 days in the summer. Well, yeah, down here you really need to keep that moist, but not waterlogged. So you can't leave the hose on and leave for 2 hours every day or every other day. But this is a good reminder that, you know, we are trying to get those roots growing out into the other soil, and drought stress is a big barrier to creating nice, pretty little root hairs, right? They do all the absorbing work. So let's just review a little bit on what we went through rather quickly. Sorry, the roller thing. And this is from the urbantree.org site. This is what's called a cue card. And the cue cards, nice bonus, are in English and Spanish. There's one on this one, which is tree planting. There's one on pruning. There's 3 or 4 of them. And so they're really nice things to use when you're maybe doing a volunteer group. They are on that website that says, we made these for you. Cal Fire gave the money, a lot of the money for it. And Western Chapter ISA got in on it. And Dr. Ed Gilman, who is the guru of trees for arborists, planting, a lot of research on the container growing of trees and pruning. So he has done a lot of this information. Well, here they are. Here's a nice graphic showing that they dug the hole and then they started chipping the sides in to expand that hole without, you know, saying, okay, we have to dig an 8-foot diameter hole. And you do want that firm, flat bottom down here. You don't want to disturb it. If you accidentally fluffed it up, if somebody came in, you know, with a pick and they got excited and they went down like twice as deep, you're going to have to stomp on it. We do not stomp on soil except underneath that root ball, because when it is grown in that organic growing media, that is going to decompose and your plant will sink. If you have a 15-gallon, it's not going to sink so fast because there's not that much distance for those initial roots to get out into the adjacent landscape mineral soil and hold it up. So while it decomposes, it'll drop down and soil will move in. But if you have a 24, 36-inch box that is in all organic, meaning it's not field grown, it's not the mineral soil, you need to be even more vigilant to get those roots out quickly to hold that up. I'm sure you've seen boxes sunken in the soil. So this is an aerial view of a circling root, and you would make a cut at just beyond the elbow because the roots, you can see maybe this is an example of a cut. So when you cut a root, it does the same thing as a tree. You know, you cut it and then it makes more, right? So if you cut it just right here, all the more is going to be going back to circle. And so this is just a great review and something I wanted you to know about that you can download from the site and use if you have like a volunteer planting day or something. Or maybe you're having people come to do work at your property and you want them to prune a certain way, and you can bring these cards out. I love this little saying. I probably am not the first one that's shown it to you, and it is a great saying. So yeah, let's go plant. Research the site, find your microclimate, find that right tree, plant it well, and then manage the soil moisture and the aeration, right? So You can't drive your truck over that new planting area. And your new tree will thrive. One little thing. This is another detail for root correction that's from the urban tree site that Dr. Ed Gilman, a couple other people worked on. And it just shows where is the true root well. Root collar is an old term, another synonym for root flare, root trunk in a way. So they're showing that there was a lot of excess that had to be removed. And we can, you know, we can cut the root and leave some soil there for a while, right? It's going to look like you've planted it kind of funny, but in time, in a couple of years, it will be fine. So did you check for root defects at the nursery? Did you find the trunk flare? And will you next time? Those are my review questions to you. I talked about Dr. Ed Gilman. This is a little extra bonus. I encourage you to go to the website. Just put in, you know, this, or you can put in Dr. Ed Gilman videos, because this is 1, 2, 3, 4 of 51 videos. It's one of his course videos, set of videos. So if you want to know more about trees from the expert, you can just go to his website and just watch videos. That's a gift from him. So parting thoughts. Select native trees for success. Work less and enjoy beautiful, healthy trees. And our goal is to plant more trees and create less stress. Thank you. There I am. All right, so 11:31, ready for 15 minutes of questions if you have any. I know we went kind of fast, so I bet you have some questions.
Rebecca, thank you so much. I really enjoyed your presentation. For all our people in the audience here, Rebecca and I were at the Arizona Community Tree Council's conference up in Prescott last weekend, and Dr. Ed Gilman was actually the keynote speaker. And wow, we learned a lot about how important roots are and what a disadvantage we are in where we're growing containerized plants and just how often something can happen. So yeah, pay attention to those roots. If later on and you see, here's one tree looks just great, and here's one that's exactly the same over here that doesn't look so great. Yeah. Odds are it's because those roots were not good. And once they're in the ground, it's very hard to repair. So thank you for getting into all that, Rebecca.
Yeah.
Okay, so
so here's a question for you. Yeah.
Okay.
Riley would like to know, what is a water-wise tree for Cochise County?
Well, I live in Gila County.
Well, is it a little bit higher elevation, Cochise?
I tell you, if I'm going to talk about some trees that I really get excited about, some that do well, I'm in Globe, which is about 3,500 feet. Perhaps it's pretty similar, but I've just really enjoyed the red push and the Chinese pistache. These trees are just workhorses. They're super drought tolerant. It takes a little so that's one of my favorites. And one of the things that I've paid attention to is when you buy these at the market, not only do you need to pay attention to the roots, a lot of times they cut the central leader out. And you buy it and it's got all this type of stuff going on until a central leader can be found and you can direct that thing, the tree up. So pay attention when you pick those out that you got a central leader on it. The other thing with
okay, we got some good input from Jan down in Cochise County. So thank you so much, Jan, for answering that.
Okay.
And do you have another one, Jan? All right, go to the nursery and look at your neighbors' yards. Look at if there's a resort, look at what's growing and doing well in the resort. And that will give you some clues. But we do need to start planting now for the trees that in 20 years will have a mature shade tree that will stay alive, right? Yeah. Okay, so Jan wants you to continue what you were saying. Do you remember what you were saying?
Yeah, another tree besides the Chinese pistache that I really like is the chased vitex. That tree is not a big tree, but you put it in the ground and it just really wants to grow. And so it takes some pruning to shape it into a tree, but very easy, at least here, my experience with it's been very easy to grow. Nice, easy tree. One of these days I'll kind of come up like, I think we were talking about this. I don't know if it was with you, Rebecca, or Mike Chamberlain I was talking with, but kind of like a top 10, our favorite trees for our planting zones, and maybe 5 or bottom 10 to kind of get away from. And like you're saying, the ones that we want to see in the next 20 years. So Sassy, you got some responses back from Jan there. Jan's actually gonna be back next week. So we're going to tell you about her presentation here at the end here. So, so Shelley has asked, is there a way to get all of Rebecca's links in a PDF? Would you be able to or share those slides or do just a page with those? And
sure,
I
I can do a reference page, resource page.
Excellent, because you shared some great information for us. I was writing down notes myself.
Yeah.
Urban Tree Foundation.
Yeah, great site.
So John says, can one use most or all of these principles for shrubs and perennials? For asks. So would you use these same planting guides for any type of shrub or any type of perennial you put in the ground?
Yes, you just adjust it because a perennial has a very small root system. You wouldn't probably go 4 to 5 times, even though it would be easy enough. Mulching is the magic for all plants.
Anything that's long-lived, you want to take care of those roots and make sure they spread out. And a shrub is going to have a similar tree structure as a tree. Some of those perennials may have a different tree system, or a root system, but I would say definitely follow these same principles. Okay, Riley's says, I have a couple of 15-gallon trees sink over a couple of years. Should we lightly dig a top layer of soil going from trunk outwards? So here we are doing a little corrective. That the trees went in, they sunk. What can somebody do?
Well, that's really tough because so if your soil is very hard all around it, and possibly the roots did not extend out into the landscape soil at all, it was in the organic growing media, the soilless, material, it was all organic mulch, then I guess you could try, it was a 15-gallon, you could try digging it up, and it would be best to do it, I'm not really sure if you want to do it in the fall or if you want to wait until spring, because you really want it to initiate that new growth. So I don't know where you are, but it might be something you might want to do in maybe February.
When I think of a situation like that, what we're really, and you can, and we learned a lot about too much top dressing and the adventitious roots coming up, but you want to protect that root collar. You want that root collar to be right at above the soil, and you want to try to encourage that root flare. So it's below grade. Perhaps put a ring out further, kind of a basin that can help catch that water and help protect that site, so that keeps that water from getting in and pooling on to where you're below grade. Because it's the pooling of that water that I think really becomes an issue. Rebecca, you got some other ideas on that?
Well, if it's 2 years and it's a 15-gallon, you might be able to dig it up. Depends on how precious of a species it is to you. If you're on slope, you can put a nice little berm behind it with some of those stones or something that, those cement berming stones, and get the water to slough away and get the soil down. But probably, I don't know, I would probably give it a try at about where the 15-gallon perimeter was, or maybe out a little bit, because you're going to end up doing a lot of root pruning with a big old strong spade and going down deep. The best way would be to do what the tree plant movers do, is they cut all the root and then they build the box around it. They leave the bottom intact. They wait until it adjusts to this new situation, and then they take it out the rest of the way. So you could try doing that with a plastic large container that you get from another plant. I have root pruned trees that have been in the ground for a couple years. I go to take the stakes off. Like when I worked at the Desert Botanical Garden, we had a Acacia smallii, but it's not acacia anymore. Anyway, Farnese, yeah, it's Farnesiana, and it's lost its genus too. But we did take the stakes off. There's a photo shoot happening, and then it just went like this, like a hinge. So, and I have pictures. I wish I had more time. I've brought those out and show the way the roots were growing, like down and then underneath the root ball and coming up on the other side. So they weren't out to hold it up. That's why there was 2 that were out on one side and the rest were kind of all under and terribly. So we did root prune about at least 50% of the main roots coming off of that trunk, because they were that messed up and they were pretty close to the trunk. This was in like beginning of July, and I had the rangers there just keep that thing wet in the parking lot at the Desert Botanical Garden. Just keep that thing wet. And in 2 months or less, I had somebody I was out there training, and I said, well, let's go shake this. It was a rock. The roots grew that fast.
Wow.
So if it's the right time, you can really get them to grow fast. So desert adapted tree, cut the roots a lot. I have a eucalyptus here that I have to do that too. It's been in the ground 2 years and it's still loose in the ground. It's like, okay, you wimp, and it's not growing. It's stunted. So we should have really looked at the root system. And sometimes, especially on those Mario Sousa Willardianas, right? The Palo Blanco, they tend to grow a big stringy root system, and we would spray them with a hose and spray and really get a look at the roots where they were attached at the crown and do some pretty aggressive root pruning.
So this cooler time of the year, we can actually take that root ball out, remove the soil, and check those roots and spread them so they have a chance to get established. It's cool enough for the tree to get established. So I don't know. I mean, we're just,
it's an experiment.
It's an experiment. Yeah.
Yeah. I have not dug a tree up.
Okay. John's asking about flagstaff. We're not really going to be able to get into a lot of the tree species, but let me hold this up here. This is, oh, I hate that.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. This is Beyond the Ponderosa. It was written by Tom de Gomez maybe about 15 years ago. It's not in print anymore, but this is really the book for what you want to grow trees in the Flagstaff area. You can go to the extension office. I'm sure they've got a reference copy there, maybe the libraries and so on. But this is really the book. So
I agree.
Yeah. All right. So moving along here. Oh, here's Jan. Mesquites, Desert Museum, Palo Verde, Vitex, Purple Leaf Plum, Desert Willow. Oh, Desert Willow, piece of cake. Yeah, good ones. All right. Kelly's asking about more info on when and how to prune trees. Kelly, I'm gonna send me an email at ckjones@arizona.edu. I'm gonna find Jan Groth's webinar that we did on tree pruning, and we can watch that. So that was good question. Whole nother topic for a presentation. Rachel's asking, is it reasonable to plant a dwarf Japanese maple in a large pot, 24-inch diameter and 30 feet high? And would you recommend a different small tree. So I don't, so a dwarf Japanese maple in a large pot. What do you think of that?
Well, I haven't grown a dwarf Japanese maple. So, but I can talk about container plants. Everything is easier to grow in the ground. So if you get kind of cold, if the sun hits it, it gets kind of hot. The roots are more vulnerable when they're in the ground. It stays kind of a nice even temperature. There are minerals available for the roots to mine as they extend out into the landscape. Whereas in a container, it's up to you to give them all the things they need in that non-mineral soil. Because if you put mineral soil in a container, as you water it, will continue to compact, and you'll lose a lot of your infiltration and percolation. You can do it. I think it's a little tougher. So I don't know, but I do know a shrub makes that has a tree form, not the whip type cane form, but a shrub with a branching sort of a form can make a really nice container plant. In Europe, they put citrus in containers and then they drag them in and out, and they called their glass houses orangeries. So I know that my grandmother in Hinsdale, Illinois, had a lemon tree that went in and out of her house for years. So it can be done. It takes more time, more attention.
Very good. Okay, so let's get down to Steve's question here. If you need a lot of mulch for, say, 10 trees, what is the best mulch at a reasonable price? Probably about 10, 15 feet tall. So where do you get your mulch from?
So mulch is on the surface. It's not an amendment, right? Amendments can be worked in. And I said I like to put that live compost in the top, like 2 inches to feed, get the kickstart the soil a little bit. So if it's on the surface, it's a blanket. That's the job. Sometimes a little will decompose, but you don't want to mix it into the soil. So the cheapest, easiest is to find the arborist and ask them to dump their load of chips. So the wood chips don't blow, like that really fine compost that I'm using for top dressing. It's going to be gone right away if it's exposed to the sun and the weather, because it's got a lot of surface area. It's a fine diameter. The wood chips are nice, big, chunky things. So they're going to stay a long time. They're not going to blow away. So that's one good thing. Composted landscape trimmings, because down here, they're all pretty much mesquite stems with tiny little leaves, right? We don't have leaf mold at all. Our compost from landscape material is pretty much wood chips. So yeah, anything that's a big wood chip, and the freer, the better.
Yeah, and if you've got your own trees, one of my best gardeners, he saves all his leaves. He puts those all, he's got the big pile of them. And so when it's time to mulch, he goes out there in the wheelbarrow and moves them around. So yeah, if you've got, free is good. So you know what, Rebecca, I'm getting some questions about, they want that link to the to the pruning video. So I'm going to go and find that, as well as the amwa.org plants list, because people want more about these plants. And so
that's a great site.
So if you would open up the Q&A box and just hit some of those questions. Well, it looks like those were some questions they asked. Susan has something there. And just give me a moment. Okay. I'll pull those out and throw them into the chat box right now.
Okay, so Susan says, we removed a dead tree. The trunk is still in the soil. Do I need to remove the stump before planting a new tree? The new tree would be located about 2 foot from the old tree. So it kind of depends on what tree. A very large growing tree is going to have, at maturity, I use 5 foot for my no-go zone by the base of a large tree. So I no-go planting there, I no-go placing water there. And so that is a place where there is going to be the larger roots from the other tree where it will encounter them. If you know why the tree died, there are some diseases that stay in the root system. Phytophthora. I'm trying to think of, pardon?
I'm sorry. Keep going.
Yeah, a Phytophthora will. So Phytophthora is a water mold, another name for it, a common name. So if you have a sprinkler hitting a tree in turf, and you do the winter rye, so it hits the tree in the winter on the trunk and runs down there, or a broken sprinkler or a sprinkler head that leaks that sprays out onto your turf, whatever. If you have water that stays at a trunk for a long time, you're making the environment for Phytophthora. So you may not know why your tree died. You might just say, well, it just got old. So even a Palo Verde can live to be 150 years. Ironwood can live to be 600. So yeah, it probably didn't just get old unless it really was an ancient tree. Something happened. So you want to know what's there before putting a new tree in. If, you know, roots can break open cracks of boulders. So is it going to have a problem with the other root system growing around it? No, it'll be deflected when the roots are little and they'll go around it. You can encourage the decomposition of that by putting emitters on it, so that you're going to enlist microbes to decompose your stump. And that could hurry it up. So yeah, I've not done it, so I don't know. You could try it.
Well, thank you, Rebecca. I found the link to that webinar, so put that in there, how to plant a tree with Jan Groth. She did an excellent job. It was live. She was in the field. We had a blast.
Nice. That's
and
fun.
And the other resource I'm putting there, I'm calling Plants for the Low and High Desert. It's the Arizona Municipal Water User Association's plant list. Mm-hmm. Excellent work. Just pay attention to your frost hardiness. And so they've got a lot of plants that are good for Cochise and Gila County, a little higher elevations. But that's an excellent resource. So just wanted to try to respond to those. And so really good questions. Thank you, folks. Okay, so what else have we got going on here? If local arborist removes a lot of dead trees, are you going to have potential bacterial issues?
Well, probably not. Roots tend to hold some disease in them more that I have encountered. Of course, fungal problems on leaves are just not down here. We're so dry. You might be in a place where you have warm and moist times and you have more leaf fungal things. So you'd want to remove that leaves for that if you thought that was going to be overwintering. Sometimes we recommend to remove leaves because there's an insect that drops down and it overwinters in the leaf matter. So you might want to remove leaf matter for that reason. But you know, generally, I would say it's not a problem until you see it's a problem. Is that a horrible answer? You know, we experiment a lot. We look up and we try to find information from people who have done the research. That's the best scenario. So the scientists from the university, Alex Hu has a great comparison of on the pecan tree of Phytophthora, Pythium, and a third disease. And he has a chart in there that shows some of the expressions, the symptoms. And it's really great. It's on pecan trees. Another tree species would maybe express a little differently, but it would probably be close enough. I learned something from Dr. Glenn Wright, our citrus specialist from Yuma, at this last weekend in Prescott. And so for Phytophthora, he listed some things that can, I don't know, cure it. I think possibly that would be an okay word to use. And one of them is a phosphorus. And so Monterey makes the homeowner to use phosphorus, which will take care of the Phytophthora. So I thought that was really interesting. And I downloaded the label and read it, read all the applications, and it was pretty interesting. It's got wide application, not just citrus.
Very good. Thank you. Okay, so I got that cleared up. I wrote how to prune instead of plant a tree. I've got both those webinars with Jan up. So I've got that cleared up now. So go ahead on into those. And I missed a question that I think Cindy shared. I think this is a great question. She says she's been leery of cutting the roots, of messing with the root ball. I've always been leery of pruning roots. Could you talk more about that? And I think, Cindy, that's something we were taught years ago. Don't mess with that root ball. And I think that it was poor advice, and we've been learning this the hard way. So Rebecca, if you could get into that, that'd be great.
So just do it, Cindy, because you know, if it's the tree that your grandmother had in a pot forever, you have a sentimental value, maybe not. Maybe be more cautious, but otherwise, the experiences that I've had with root pruning have turned out well. And I've learned a lot from doing it. So I've, you know, pruned them before putting them in the ground. You really do kind of need to keep them, you know, you don't get any forgiveness when you've taken even more of the absorbing root away, right? So that drought stress that happens for container plants during that, you know, the planting, that establishment period where you need to make sure that they are able to have water in their limited area, limited square footage of absorbing roots. So you have to be more on the watering. And I would just go for it. Just pay more attention to water management.
Yeah.
And the right time of year, right? You know, you're going to get the root growing when it's warmer.
And it's just so important because it's so easy for root girdling to happen in a container. And if you plant it with those roots already starting to circle, that tree's going to fail much younger. It's not going to be able to live its full life. And that's your window to be able to fix that. And so
that's a good word to use, the window.
And it'll tolerate that, is particularly with fall planting, because it's not under the stress of getting planted in the heat of the, you know, in April or May when the heat is on and it won't rain and the evapotranspiration's high. And then, get those roots set up right and you'll have a happy tree for a long time. What'd you say? Less stress for trees and people.
Yes.
Like,
and as Chris was sort of saying, it's going to fail. So if you have a really bad root system, it's just that you're gonna get enough of a top growing on it to catch the wind. And since the job of the root to anchor is not being performed, it's going to be blown over. So you might as well go for it, Cindy. And then, you know, document, take photos. I love documenting what I do. Write down, you know, the date when you get that firm response. You just, you know, if you take this tree that possibly you have one that you think has a problem and needs some root pruning, and you do that wiggle test towards the bottom, if it wiggles and it's been in the ground for more than a growing season, you have a root problem. Pretty darn sure. Like that eucalyptus we have out there, that red cap gum, and it doesn't want to grow. So it's showing another sign that there's something wrong with the root system.
Right. Well, I think our questions have winded down. We're just about at the top of the hour, which is perfect. So Rebecca, this has been great. I really enjoyed our time together. I'm going to put the evaluation survey up one more time. I just pulled this off the front there. If you would take a moment to open that up, and just, it's brief, take you a couple of minutes, and just helps me out with my reporting and letting me know what we can do for these webinars. So I'm going to put up our closing slides here. Here's Rebecca one more time. Yay, thank you very much. Excellent presentation.
It was fun to be with.
Thank you.
The people of the mountains.
And we just had our Q&A with Rebecca. And here is our slide for next week, Thursday, September 30. We've got Jan Groth with us, who's the Master Gardener Coordinator for Cochise County Cooperative Extension. She's based at the University of Sierra Vista. And she's going to be talking about pollinator plants to plant now and the advantages of fall planting. And so if you don't know Jan, you'll have a great time joining us. She's a lot of fun to be with. And pollinator plants, our pollinators desperately need them right now. So very good. With that, thank you, everybody. Have a great day. And I'm going to turn this off. Have a great day. Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.